Hi, and welcome to The Print. My name is Karanjeet Kaur, and I'm a writer and an editor. Let's talk today about what we owe Riya Chakrabarti. Last week, a clean chit arrived for Riya Chakrabarti, 5 years after a poisonous witch hunt shredded her life on live television. Led by a group of news anchors who found common cause with an army of anonymous ex-warriors that seemingly mushroomed overnight, Chakrabarti's life turned into a free-for-all. And we shot it straight into our veins. Now, more than 1,000 days after losing her partner, actor Sushant Singh Rajput, the CBI has found no evidence of abetment to suicide, no financial misappropriation, no emotional manipulation or kala jadoo. Nothing at all. So what do we owe Riya Chakrabarti? This is not a rhetorical question. Chakrabarti's losses started piling up in the days after her boyfriend tragically died by suicide on 14 June 2020. Rajput was held up as an iconoclast, a self-made star with no connections in Bollywood. But that compassion and understanding was not offered to Riya Chakrabarti, who is also an outsider to the industry. In the blast radius of India's collective bloodlust, we ensured her life was arrested in motion, her career came to a grinding halt, and her family and friends were harassed. We even stole her grief from her. I have a flashbulb memory of that era, watching the depths TV media was beginning to plumb with my jaw on the floor. In hindsight, we were witnessing an inflection point like no other in India's culture. This was a socio-political vortex that would eddy out in different directions while swallowing Riya Chakrabarti whole. All through July and August of 2020, as India was mid-pandemic, channels broadcast photos of Rajput's body and dissected his medical prescriptions and the state of his mind. They deployed voodoo dolls and skull graphics to peddle theories about black magic. Reporters shrieked like banshees outside police stations, courts, Chakrabarti's home, anywhere that she might appear. One of the worst offenders was Republic TV's Arnab Goswami, who apparated on our screens with a new refrain every day. Sometimes it was "Mujhe drugs do," and sometimes it was "Mujhse saha nahi ja raha hai." Goswami spewed venom on the daily in front of panelists, most of whom had nothing to do with the case. For example, actor Mukesh Khanna, who was last relevant in the 1990s. But they were all in agreement that Bollywood was a labyrinthine den of vice. Together, they rejoiced in the imminent downfall of a nepotistic industry that, they alleged, had in cahoots with Chakrabarti driven Rajput to suicide. Over at times now, we were subjected to deep analysis, like the meaning of the words "I'm a bounce." You'll remember how the channel correlated it to a bounce check. In one particularly frenzied episode, Navika Kumar walked into the studio carrying a tote bag full of evidence and important files and spirited the anchor away to glean from them. Kumar would go on to further the most regressive stereotypes about women. She once said, "Women can be possessive. It's seen in Indian families that the wife or girlfriend doesn't really like too much of the man's relationship with his own family." I could pick out the most egregious example of reportage from that time and still barely touch the surface of the derangement we saw. Everyone from the police to the Press Council of India haplessly criticized the coverage. The Bombay High Court specifically called out Republic TV and Times Now for their role in sensationalizing Rajput's death and the adverse impact it would have on the investigation. Journalist Nidhi Razdan said in an interview that she had never seen a race to the bottom this bad. But it was only thanks to the audience, which is the rest of us, that consumed this public execution like pornography. Something broke with the SSR coverage. I want to draw your attention to the backdrop. India's Me Too movement had unfolded a year and a half prior. It was an impulse, however inadequate, to hold powerful men to account. By 2020, it had already been reduced to a punchline. Power had flowed back to where it had always rested, and the backlash was vicious. Women were being punished for demanding too much and for having demanded it too loudly. A few months down the line, India was barely recovering from the Delhi riots, the CAA NRC protests, and the contentious farm laws that were being bulldozed through the parliament. That's when the pandemic struck, rendering almost everyone terrified and powerless. COVID-19 stripped us of our control over our health, our livelihoods, and our movement. Migrant workers were dying on highways, and the economy was in free fall. We needed somewhere to direct this impotent fury, and Chakrabarti was served up on a platter to us. Young, female, and on the brink of success. She was an independent woman who lived with a man on her own terms, a kind of autonomy that is intolerable in this country. She was a prime candidate for the stake, while the rest of India waited, torches lit. While Chakrabarti was being eviscerated on TV, the spiraling hysteria was proving to be very profitable and very political. Within a week of Rajput's death, mentions of suicide dropped suddenly and were replaced by the term murder. A University of Michigan study analyzed 7,000 YouTube videos and 1 lakh tweets from the period and found clear patterns. It found that BJP politicians systematically pushed the murder narrative. Around mid-July 2020, they began demanding a CBI inquiry, deliberately undermining the Mumbai police investigation. Remember, this was being conducted by a government then led by their former ally, the Shiv Sena, as well as the NCP and the Congress. The Bihar Chief Minister personally intervened to get an FIR filed in Patna, that is Sushant Singh Rajput's home city, unleashing a jurisdictional circus. I'm sure the fact that the state was heading into elections was entirely coincidental. Posters and stickers asserting "Na bhoole hain, na bhoolenge" appeared across Bihar, weaponizing a young man's tragic death as an election rallying cry. Rajput, whose films such as Kedarnath had been attacked by the same ecosystem, proved to be very politically expedient in death. Political careers were launched on the back of Rajput's death and Chakrabarti's hounding. The shrillest voice on the lot was Kangana Ranaut, who spent months calling Chakrabarti a murderer and attacking Bollywood. She is now a BJP MP. Journalist Pradeep Bhandari, who amplified conspiracy theories, is now a BJP spokesperson. Bihar's former DGP, Gupteshwar Pandey, who addressed press conferences about the case with theatrical flair, joined the Janata Dal United shortly after. But we must all take credit for this ghoulish tamasha. We were the TRPs, the eyeballs, the engagement metrics that made this entire enterprise so valuable. We were a bunch of useful idiots whose viewership kept this bonfire burning. For a few months, we even unleashed screeds against Bollywood. Now all is forgiven and forgotten, and we are back to defending supposedly drug-addled Nepo babies, joyfully contributing toward their 600 crore box office collections. It's back to business as usual for everyone except Rhea Chakrabarti, whose career and life remain in suspension. To her credit, she's refused to crumble. In an interview from earlier this year, she speaks of a mindset shift that happened when she was in jail, of how she tapped into her inner power and refused to play the victim. She's now launched a podcast and a clothing line with her brother, both of which are called Chapter 2. She even cheekily talks about almost naming it Chudail Ka Badla. But beneath the resilience is the sorrow. Chakrabarti admits that she was never a massive success in films, and that door has, possibly forever, shut for her. Her brother, she says, who had a 98 percentile and was set to join an IIM, was arrested even though he had no part to play in the case. The clothing line was launched to pay for their legal bills. Chakrabarti's steadfastness is real, but so is the wreckage. She might have made peace with it, but her life was stolen from her. What other choice does she have? So what do we owe Rhea Chakrabarti? The channels owe her airtime and apologies, and they deserve more than a light rap on their wrist. The politicians who built their careers on her persecution owe her accountability. But the harder debt is ours. Chakrabarti is still here, still standing. But we've already scrolled past to the next spectacle, as we always do.